It has been 30 years since the release of Jason Goes to Hell, easily one of the most controversial Friday the 13th films in the series. I was super excited to revisit this one. You know, years ago when I got the DVD of this, and it was going to be the first time I really genuinely watched the film top to bottom, I remember my brother looking at the DVD cover and saying, "Oh, Jason Goes Straight to Hell." I laugh hard then, and I laugh hard now. It's something that has taken a life of its own on the internet with everybody that's heard me say the phrase, and I think it's funny. But let's just get into it, man. 30 years. We've all heard the story about Adam Marcus saying, "Sean told me, get the damn hockey mask out of the film." Now, I think there's a little bit of preconceived notions that means Sean was not a fan of Jason. Granted, he didn't make the series what it was, which was Jason Voorhees becoming the absolute star and icon of the series. I think what it really boiled down to was this. Sean got back involved in the series because he wanted to be part of Freddy vs. Jason. He knew it was going to be this monster success, so he got back on board with New Line. They got the rights to the character, and I think what he was trying to do was, New Line wanted to make a movie with Jason because there was still so much money value in it after the success of Freddy's Dead, but he didn't want to do anything that could potentially screw with any kind of plot devices for Freddy vs. Jason or the look or appeal of what that film could be. So doing something with taking Jason somewhat out of the picture, or doing something that wouldn't mess with the character too much on a physical standpoint, was probably something he was looking to do. Hence the get the hockey mask out of the film. 30 years later, I put this movie on and I wondered if I was going to have as much fun as I used to. The opening of the movie starts with this beautiful woman going to a cabin late at night by herself where she's getting in the shower, doing her thing, and before you know it, this big, burly, nasty character appears. And of course, it's Jason Voorhees. And just by a quick glance, you could already tell that is Kane Hodder. Easily the most identifiable Jason by far. He has this certain look where he's bulky yet tall at the same time. You just know his build when you see it. Now, the look of Jason in this film is somewhat hysterical but bizarre. He almost looks like this overgrown Toxic Avenger thing in this movie, with his head almost overgrowing over the mask. It looks very decrepit and gross. It almost looks like it could have been in somewhat of a continuation from Jason Takes Manhattan. But before you know it, Jason is blown up to smithereens. Now, the first time I saw this movie, I was like laughing my ass off with my brother. We couldn't believe what we were seeing. I wasn't even disappointed, to be honest with you. I just thought, where's this movie going? I realized right then and there, I can't trust Jason Goes to Hell. This is not like anything else I've ever seen from this series. We see Jason be put on a coroner's table where before you know it, that heart starts beating again and the coroner eats it in one of the grossest yet most hysterical scenes I've ever seen. When he takes a bite out of that heart and then gags it back up and those little bright lights hit him in the chest, it is so over-the-top funny. It's one of my favorite scenes of the series. When it comes to Jason Goes to Hell, I feel like there are basically two parties. Now, I'm not saying that's all of it. There are certainly people that will probably say, it's fine, it is what it is. But it's such a strong flavor of tea. You know, if you need Jason in the woods or with a machete or that hockey mask through and through this movie, I can understand you not being a big fan of this. But if you like basically big budget B horror films, horror comedies, I think Jason Goes to Hell was one of the best to do it in that genre. This movie to me is genuinely funny, and I laugh as hard now as I did the first time I saw it. Some of the characters like Leslie Jordan working in the diner are moments that I cherish every time I see it. Rest in peace, Leslie, we miss you, man. Creighton Duke has some hysterical lines all throughout this movie. Now, his character is supposed to come across as like this serious guy, but you can still tell like there's this level of just jokiness behind everything he says and does that works perfectly. The actor who played Creighton Duke definitely knew what kind of movie this was, and he made it happen. I really feel like this movie is a freight train. It never feels slow at all to me. Now, there is somewhat of a troubled past with the editing of this film. Word has it that Sean Cunningham got his hands in the editing room on this and cut out a lot of stuff. Adam Marcus has even described that there was so much backstory left out. Apparently, Creighton Duke had a ton of more scenes with a backstory for him and other things like that. How long the cut of the original version of this film was, I don't know that we'll ever know or if we've ever even seen all that footage, but I know that Adam is working on a documentary called The Heart of Darkness, the making of Jason Goes to Hell, and hopefully we're going to get a lot more information on that as well. Now, obviously, Jason is body swapping from all over the place. Now, here's what I want to say about Jason Goes to Hell, somewhat in its defense. You know, you can look at some movies, and of course this is my opinion, where you feel like they want to do something interesting or different, but don't fully commit. For instance, in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, we're supposed to think that Freddy was innocent. Now, that would have been a big plot change and something risky, but I would have been really excited about. Come to find out, they basically backpedal and you find out he was a creep. Or in Halloween Ends, how I feel like Corey Cunningham should have taken out Michael in the cave and he became Michael at the end. One thing I'll always give credit to Jason Goes to Hell for is they go completely with this body hopping thing throughout the movie. You don't see Jason again in the physical form till the very end. And whether you like it or not, I think credit should be given to going full force with that aspect. I mean, Adam and the team, they went all the way with it, and kudos to that. They made a very fun, fast-paced movie, in my opinion. This movie is still funny to me 30 years later. I laughed at a lot of the scenes. One of my favorites is when Adam Marcus is a cop at the jail. You see Robert Campbell, now possessed by Jason, come in and literally grab Adam Marcus by the shoulder and throw him over the counter, and Adam sold it like a WWE wrestler. These guys clearly had a sense of humor, and I think it's hysterical. Harry Manfredini's score is also pretty cool in this movie. It's really frantic and all over the place, and it's one that you might get confused when you hear maybe a sting from part 6 or part 4 or part 3 maybe, but when you hear Jason Goes to Hell soundtrack, right away you know it. There's even like this sound of like somebody scraping something across a rail and hitting it, and pop, pop. In the opening, you know what I'm talking about. It's probably playing in your head right now. Is Jason Goes to Hell a good movie? I really think that depends on how you look at it. If you prefer your Jason in the woods with a hockey mask, with camp counselors and people going down one by one, I get that. I don't think this is one of those movies where you're going to be able to sway somebody to like it if they're not a fan of it. They're judging what they see on screen, and it's pretty black and white. Usually I feel like there's some gray area with movies where you can sway people's opinion on some stuff, but with Jason Goes to Hell, he commits so much to that crazy, zany storyline that they have that you either like it or you don't. And I applaud that. But here's one thing about this movie that is absolutely insane I've got to give credit to. This was the renegade era of movie making in the early 90s. Adam Marcus went to the set of Army of Darkness, got the Necronomicon from Sam Raimi, and put it in the movie because he wanted to make Jason a Deadite. This is just nuts, but he did it. And that is the actual Necronomicon from Sam Raimi in Jason Goes to Hell. That is so illegal. They didn't own that. But the fact that they did that, think about that for a second. That is insane, people. And some of the makeup effects in this movie, I think, are incredible. K&B and the team knew that even though this was probably going to get cut out of the editing phase for the MPAA, New Line was smart enough to know that, hey, let's put it out uncut on home video. They probably had massive success with The Dream Child on VHS, releasing that uncut, and so Jason Goes to Hell has famously been released uncut for a long time. And we're grateful for that. We get to see some really cool effects work with the girl getting that shank going through her chest and all the way up in the tent. One of the greatest scenes gore-wise in the series. I also really relate to John D. LeMay in this movie. When I was watching it today, I was wondering, what is it that makes me connect with this guy so much? Then I realized I am actually the exact same age he was filming that movie now. I'm 31, and in that movie, he was 31 years old. And it's just crazy to think about. I've been watching this movie for so long, I can't believe I'm actually at that age. I know time only goes faster as you get older too, so I better enjoy it. Overall, guys, revisiting Jason Goes to Hell 30 years later, I laugh just as hard today as I did back then. And it's one of those movies that, man, it's so identifiable. It's early 90s, it's splatter punk, just B-movie mania, and I really enjoy it. The ending, as great as that is, it's really not even my favorite part. Sure, it's cool seeing Freddy's hand grab Jason, but the zany wildness of this movie is something that, after 8 Friday the 13th films that I might binge and get to Jason Goes to Hell, that's the one where I get the pizza and beer out and just laugh and have a good time. So after 30 years, I give a big cheers to Jason Goes to Hell as one of the most wackiest, most fun B-horror movies I've ever seen. So I ask you guys, 30 years later, has your opinion on Jason Goes to Hell ever changed? Or do you feel the same way you did today as you did back then? See you guys next time. Huge giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.